Photoshop Project 3 Menu Image Correction Stage 2 Correcting Lighting Problems. Before we begin this, you need to understand certain terminology. Highlights are the lightest areas of an image that include detail. Direct sources or reflected light on water that are completely bright are called specular highlights, and they should not be considered a highlight. Shadows are the darkest part of the image that still contains some detail. If it is a solid black item, it is not considered a shadow. The shades between the highlights and the shadows are the midtones or gammas of the image. Contrast refers to the tonal variation within the image. If it is an image that is composed mostly of highlights and shadows, it's a high contrast image. An image that has a lot of detail and is mostly in the midtone range is a low contrast image. Contrast is linked also to saturation, which is the intensity of a color or how much it varies away from gray. The saturation of an individual color and the correct saturation of a different color in relation to another one affects the overall contrast of an image. If an image is undersaturated or oversaturated, the contrast is going to suffer and you lose detail. The colors will either be muted or they will be too bright. We're going to work on correcting problems with brightness and contrast. You need to open the Buffalo file. Choose Image, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast. Make sure Preview is selected and drag the brightness slider up to 35 and drag the contrast up to 10. Increasing the contrast brings out more of the detail in the texture. This is the focal point of the image. Pay attention to what's going on the stake. Click OK to apply that change and save this file as Buffalo Fixed. Make sure you're saving as a Photoshop file and then you can close it. Next, we're going to use levels to correct the contrast and the tonal range of an image. We're going to open up the chef image. We need to look at the histogram. If you can't see it, open your histogram. And in the options, look for the expanded view. The histogram can help you identify problems that need to be corrected. We want to change our channel from colors to RGB, and this is going to show us the distribution of pixels from the darkest to the lightest portion of the image. If a warning appears in the upper right corner, reset the cache. Choose Image, Adjustments, Levels, and make sure again that your preview is checked. The Levels dialog box has two sets of sliders that control the input levels and the output levels. The input level slider has a gray triangle in the center for adjusting the midtones. The sliders in the Levels dialog box correspond to the tonal range of the image. You'll see it looks exactly like the histogram above. Move your input shadow slider to the right until it just touches the left edge of the curve. That immediately started to darken the dark areas. You're going to move the gamma center slider to the left until the middle box below the slider shows approximately 1.5. Did you see how the tones changed in the mid-tone areas? It controls the proportion of dark tones to lighter tones. If you increase gamma, you increase the proportion of lighter grays, and it increases the contrast in the lighter shades and will lighten the entire image. If we hold that to the right, We would extend the tonal range of the darker shades, and we would darken the image. To decrease contrast in the image, you can also adjust the output levels. For our purposes, the output levels are good. We're going to say OK to close the dialog box, and we will save this file as a Photoshop file named Chef Fixed. Next, we're going to use the exposure adjustment to correct some lighting issues. So we'll close Chef Fixed and open Chicken. In Image Adjustments, we're going to select Exposure. Again, make sure Preview is selected. Pick up the white point dropper. The eyedropper in the exposure dialog box will adjust the image's luminance, or the degree of lightness, from white to black. By adjusting the luminance, you can change the lightness of the image without affecting any of the color. And click the white area on the top edge of the plate. It may take a little bit to do this. It's a very small area, and you want to click where you're going to bring this up somewhere between 15 and 20%. Mine came up a little high at 28, but it's still okay. Drag the gamma correction slider, which is the one on the bottom, to the left. We want to extend the midtone range. So we're going to bring the gamma correction out to somewhere around 1.2, in that area. Then pick up the offset and drag it slightly to the left to add some detail back into the midtones and the shadows. The white point is going to remain unaffected, but all of the other pixels are going to have the shadows and midtones darken. We're not going very far with it. Click OK to accept the adjustment, and save this file as Chicken Fixed, and make sure it is also a Photoshop file.